Alright, I finally managed to get one big project out of the way for a friend, as evidenced by all the wonderful gouges here in my table. I was working on a Hammerland SP200 Super Pro, actually a World War II era military receiver. I was going to film it, but unfortunately I just didn't know enough about it to be confident enough to video it, honestly. And plus, it was so large between the 57-pound power supply, the 100-pound radio chassis, and the separate speaker, I had no room on the bench. So instead, I've got two other little projects that I need to take care of for this gentleman. Starting with a transistor set. I don't normally work on transistor sets. I have done some stereos in the past. They're just not as interesting to me. But he was having some issues with this one. And it's a family heirloom, so it'd be nice to get this one working again. So this is a Sears Silvertone Ultra Power 800 from about 1962, if the Sam's photo fact is to be believed. And it's all there. There is one small leather strap on the bottom that has torn off that holds the back in place. It's got a pair of buttons, and these are in... Oh, they're starting to deteriorate. And it's made with a genuine cowhide. So, real cows went into making this. And it's just a basic AM band receiver. The issue he's having with it, having done work to it already, is... If we turn it on, give it a second... That is maximum volume.
Most guys don't realize that they're 80s or 40s. Symptoms of erectile dysfunction can be slight and subtle.
So it's not great. Background on this set, he said at some point batteries were put into it prior to restoration work, and it uses a 9-volt, not a 9-volt, but it looks like a bunch of C cells to make up about 9 volts. And something in the set smoked, not exactly sure what, something in the set smoked, and even after the work he did, it hasn't run right. So we need to see, did one of the power transistors in the end stage, you know, did it fry and the gain is basically nil? Because it does use 2 transistors in the output. I looked at the SAMs here recently. So we just need to figure out what the problem is and narrow it down. So we're not doing a full-blown workover on it. We're just trying to track down one little problem. So the first thing I got to do is we got to see how to get into it and how to take it apart. Because I am not entirely sure how to go about doing that. Alright, so the receiver hangs upside down. We've got our C-cell battery pack in here. The one thing I can see right off the bat is we have a paper capacitor right here. It's a 0.2, only rated at 200 volts, and it's coming off the volume control. And I believe is it actually coming off the volume or the tone? Because this is a combined volume and tone. I'll need to check the schematic to see which. So that needs to go. I'm also seeing this electrolytic right here looks to be a bit old. Previous owner liked to use military grade caps, nice decent spec ones. I'm going to go through that and check versus the schematic to make sure those are all correct. Interesting how these transistors actually have little plastic caps over them. I wonder if that's for vibration dampening? Interesting. And then of course we have some of the older style. They're kind of an oval shape, long body with the 3 leads coming out the bottom. Kind of neat, don't see those too often. One thing the schematic does not provide, sadly, is the part number for the transistors, which is just a little bit annoying, but that's okay. We can usually figure it out. Usually part number stamped on them anyway. Alright, so how do we get it apart? Probably need to remove the knobs here. So we have a 2-part tuning, we have a 2-part volume and tone, and then we have this jack over here, which is for a headphone. That unscrews like that, and that should just pop right out the side. The question is, how does the rest of it extract? Alright, so the battery pack is held in place just with little clips. I'll just set that off to the side for now, because I can't tell how to take it apart. And... okay, so the tuning capacitor has a bracket that screws in place right here, and I'm seeing a third nut down there. So it looks like in order to free it, we're going to have to undo those. I wonder if I have a nut driver the right size. Okay, I managed to get those undone with my socket extension here. The third one over there, someone smartly put a piece of tape on it so that it would grab a hold of the socket on the way out, so you don't lose it. Try to see if I can't gently... be as gentle as humanly possible with it. That side comes up fine. This side is being a bit more of a pain about it. There we go. Alright. So we're up off the stud on that side, and we are up off the side of that side, and we can swing this over like this. This isn't the optimal way. I suppose I could disconnect everything, but I think I'll just leave it alone. What are we looking at? Here's the main board. Speaker connections. So yeah, we're going to need to replace that off the bat. There is one couplet in here. I looked at the schematic, and it does spell out the parts that are in here. Pretty basic. Probably nothing to worry about. That transistor with the gold leads looks suspiciously new. T82980213, although it does match the part numbers of the others. And it is even the same brand. Huh. Well, no, I suppose that one has gold leads. It's a T84. Well, I think the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make sure we have the expected battery voltage. The pack should be providing about 9 volts, assuming that the C cells are any good. If not, I have a regular 9 volt that I can use, and we'll just use some clip leads and see if that does any better. And the SAMS does helpfully have all of the appropriate voltages listed at various points. Oops, that's AC volts. Okay, so the pack, when off, is reading about 10.8. And let's see what happens when we put it under load. Let me turn this on. If I can remember which way is on. Okay, so we're still at about 10.4 volts. Alright, so that's okay. I want to pull up the schematic real quick. I want to see what this cap right here is for. Alright, so this guy is actually in the tone control section, and that's going between one of the output transistors and the tone control, which is the forward section here. The back section contains the power switch and volume. But I'm going to swap that out first thing. Okay, one yellow axial overkill capacitor installed. I don't think this is going to make much of a difference at all, but we'll see. I feel like that helped a little bit. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is verify a few voltages, because, again, the SAMS gives us some pretty good points to go from. Let's see here. 4.7 volts there. Using battery negative as ground for the circuit. One of the easiest places to go, actually, is this side of this capacitor I just installed, which, according to the schematic, should have 8 volts. Interesting. They're saying there should be about half of that at that point. Does that change? Let me check and see what the schematic says I should have the volume set at. Well, they don't state exactly where the volume potentiometer should be set, which is a little obnoxious. I'd say that's about where it ought to be. There's a 100 microfarad in the output, which I would assume is that guy right there. I don't want to jump to conclusions with transistors being bad. The only real way to tell is to pull them out and then do I have a beta tester to check and see what the amplification of each one is, and then pull up the data sheet and cross-check and see if they're, about right. I think what I'll do is I will... Whoop! That wire joint failed, so I'll need to fix that. Okay. Just taking a look at the soldering here. Obviously some work's been done. You can see all the new shiny solder joints where things have been installed. Is that a diode? Yeah, that's probably the detector. It does show that the detector is just a simple diode. Alright, so capacitors over here have been replaced. I'm just looking for anything like solder joints that are accidentally bonding areas together, like the traces have been bridged. I'm not seeing anything that really stands out. Interesting. Okay. I think the next thing I'll do, that capacitor right there, looks like the solder around it which changed out, but that looks pretty old. Just looking at some of the ones that are in here, those look like old Radio Shack stock from the 70s or 80s. I've got some newer stuff. I might replace that just for peace of mind. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to poke around a little bit more with this, and if I come up with anything new, I'll let you know. Okay, so I have done a little bit of detective work, and I think I've narrowed down the culprit. This little fellow right here. So I did a bunch of checking with a schematic, went back and forth between these, checked the resistor values, made sure everything was okay. Most everything checked out until I got to a resistor tucked up underneath the volume control. This blue guy right here, it's a new one I just put in. This guy here, and this one just over here on the other side, are a pair of 3.3 ohm resistors. Those guys right there supply, well, B+, for lack of a better term. They provide the voltage to each of the output transistors. There's one PNP and one NPN, and these one resistor feeds each of these from, well, it goes through a 22 kilo ohm resistor, and then it comes from a 3300 ohm resistor from 9 volt source. So that provides the main supply for those two. And then the 100 microfarad capacitor over here taps into that, and that is what drives the speaker. Now, he said that this thing smoked. So when I powered it up after I found, let's see, the resistor back here, that 3.3 had been replaced with a 100 ohm. That seemed wrong, so I pulled that out and put a 3.3 back in there. As soon as I did that, this one right here started sweating like crazy. Smelled awful, and there were bubbles forming on the outside. So I pulled that, checked the schematic, put a 3.3 back in there, fired it back up again, and immediately got some fantastic smells. Went and checked again. Sure enough, it was getting hot as hell. In fact, let me double check and make sure it has retained its original value. These are 1% tolerance metal film. And 3.5. Okay, so I haven't destroyed it. Oops, sorry about that. That's all good, well and good. So I verified the surrounding ones, made sure that any resistors that were in any of the biasing were still good. Because if that is pulling a crap load of current, it means the transistor it's attached to is drawing a ton of current. And I needed to know why. I wanted to make sure that what transistor wasn't being overdriven, which the resistors that couple to its base, all of those checked out. So then out of curiosity, I put my meter across the collector and emitter of this resistor and got this result. I've actually got it pulled out of circuit here. Which one of these two was it? Sorry. Ah, there we go. So measuring from the collector and emitter, I get that. Not even half of an ohm of resistance. And it doesn't matter which way I go. I was going to do a diode check to see if the thing was still working as a transistor. No. That part of the junction right there is one fused piece. The base still reads okay-ish. There's no resistance from it to either of those legs. Actually, no. It should measure something in at least one direction. So that transistor's fried. Just absolutely, completely fried. And it was trying to take out the closest value resistor to it. Considering how low it was going to pull a substantial amount of current. So that's great. So what is this? Well, unfortunately, all the transistors in this thing use whatever proprietary naming system or numbering system. This just says T82980-213 with what I think is the Signetics emblem. It's a squared off S. I think that's Signetics. Could be somebody else. And they're all like that. They're all numbered like that. So I went back to Radio Museum, and they separated each of the pages of the photo fact out individually, and I was able to find the one with the parts list that gave actual numbers. They used either RCA and they spec'd either RCA or Raytheon 2N series transistors. So this guy is a germanium PNP. This is a 2N408. Those apparently are still available through amplified parts. Apparently they are used in guitar pedals. So those are still available. I found a pair of them on eBay. I've already ordered them up. And just in case, I don't think the matching NPN transistor back here is bad, but just to be sure, I located one on eBay. That is a 2N649. And I grabbed one of those just to have a match, and in fact they're both the same manufacturer, so that's nice. So I figure I'll replace them as a pair, just for peace of mind. And yeah, I'm hoping with that fixed, we shouldn't have that distortion, and the volume should be a little better. Now, I checked to the transistors that I have on hand here, and I did a cross-reference online. I have nothing that will cross with this. There are very few that will, and I don't carry any germanium transistors, unfortunately. All I have are silicon. So, in a few days' time, I should have a good replacement, and then we can carry on with the repair work on this, and hopefully that should be all it needs. It should be pretty straightforward. Alright, my mail finally showed up after a failed delivery. Because USPS always shows up at the most inopportune time to drop off stuff. Anyway, I got my 2N408s, and I also thought I was getting a 2N649, but the part that I do have on hand is a 2N1065, I don't know what the hell that is. So I think someone goofed on eBay, but thankfully I don't seem to need it. I've got the 408 installed, and I've got the set on right now, and I can show with my finger here this resistor is not getting warm at all, and
The new generation of black activists, leaders, artists, business owners, and educators. Because a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
So it gets really, really loud now. So that's good. On the downside, it looks like the lower quarter of the volume control is basically wiped out. I tried spraying deoxit in there, trying to clean it up, but I think there are parts of the carbon track that have just been effectively destroyed. Either by overuse. I looked at the schematic, which I did print out a kind of poor resolution copy here, and the volume control does get a, it says it should be about 8.7 volts. I'm sure that was using C cells of the period on one tap, and then it comes through a 6 microfarad electrolytic to couple the audio signal into the first audio frequency amplifying transistor down here. It shouldn't be drawing a lot of current. Is that going back to ground? It doesn't look like it. Not really. It has a fixed point here. Yeah, I don't think it does. Well, either way. There are some spots on the lower part of it that it does work occasionally. Let's see if I can't find one of them. Let's rub out. It's about right there. You can get a signal through, but it's not great. If I pull on it slightly, it improves. Oop. Yeah, I can't do that. Get caught.
Mr. Dillard, on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Form of dry AMD coach.
I get that a lot of players would probably look at service as an
He did die in that cross and rose again for...
By visiting standuptocancer.org/90s.
In Washington.
Like New York. Yeah, I mean...
You have enough scalp.
Mark, up 54 points right now to 39,003. The S 0.5%, and the Nasdaq seeing a little bit of a surge right now too, by almost 1% or 140 points. Set in stone, firmed up numbers for you on the way at 120.
When should you buy stocks? When do you sell? Does it always feel like it's too little too late? Well, what if there's a way to truly know how the market is behaving before the pros...
Well, either way, it works. The volume issue has been more or less corrected. So that's about all I'm going to be doing to this. I'm going to package it back up and give it back to him here. So let me reinstall chassis.
Well, then we gotta... That's what I have all these...
Alina.
Charts.com. Trusted by thousands of online investors, StockCharts.com has a system.
Cases and what kids actually...
Yo, ZipRecruiter.com.
Hi, for you.
Look, more than 75% of commuters will be involved in JP Pendergast of Pendergast Law.
And I think that'll about do it. Honestly, I wish I could do more, but the odds of finding a replacement volume control for this exact set are kind of low, being that it's a combined power, volume, and tone control assembly. I don't really have a good way of taking it apart to try and see if it's salvageable. Honestly, it's probably a carbon track style, in which case there really isn't anything I can do. Once the carbon's worn off in those areas, it's just kind of done for. But the point is, now you can actually listen to the thing. You might want to sit a little bit further away from it than normal. It'll fill a room. So yeah. No resistors are smoking. It was a relatively inexpensive repair. I mean, these transistors after shipping were like $15 or something. But nothing too crazy, and sure, hopefully the owner will be able to enjoy it again. And as always, thanks for sticking around and watching. See you in the next one.